Act like you want to be, and soon you will be the way you act. So said Leonard Cohen. And you know, he was absolutely right. Act like you want to be, and soon you will be the way you act. Now, I learned this principle, I guess it's going back 4 or 5 years ago, approximately. And I learned it from a man who, by the name of Paul. And this was at a time when I was lowering a snake's belly at the end of a rope, and I had my heart ripped out more often than people change their underwear. When I was walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and I really was. Anyway, I found Paul, or he found me. But anyway, Paul was a counselor, and apparently he charged huge bucks to rep, to do counseling with corporations. And he charged me something, but he said he was giving me a big deal, and I guess he was. But anyway, he would come over and spend a lot of time with me, like 3, 4, 5 hours, and he would ask me everything about myself. He was amazing. And the next day he would send me these emails with everything we had talked about. It was just absolutely amazing. But anyway, he was really interested in everything about me, like how I became the way I was. And anyway, his what he was doing was he was creating different aspects of who I was. And and we would talk all about my life, and one of the aspects that we came up with was, and we would put names on these aspects so we could identify them. We would write them down. And one of the aspects was Bobby. Now, Bobby was what I was called when I was a kid growing up. And when I was a kid growing up, I felt stupid. Uh, like I remember when I was in, I just remember this now, but when I was in school, like grade one, I think it was, at that time they had like rows of kids. And the first row, on the left side was Eagles, and they were the smart kids. They were the bright ones, the ones that pleased the teacher. And the second row might have been the Bears, and they were good too, but not quite as good as the Eagles. And then you had different ones. And of course, the last rows was the turkeys. And you can guess where I was. I was right at the very back of the row, designated as the turkeys. They were the ones that were distracted. They were the ones that would cause problems. They were the ones that weren't listening. And I just wanted to disappear. I couldn't give a rat's ass. I just didn't want to be there. And I just, if they just leave me alone, that's all I cared about, because I wasn't the least bit interested in what the teacher was saying. I mean, most of the time. So anyway, but I was different. Um, but I felt sometimes, because when the teacher would ask me a question, I was, of course, on another planet. I had no idea what she was talking about. Some of the kids would laugh, and I kind of felt stupid. Like I knew I was smart, but, at the same time, I felt stupid. And then going through the valley of the shadow of death, I felt stupid, because how could anybody be so stupid as to not to realize I didn't do anything to keep my wife from leaving me. I was so stupid. How could anybody be so stupid? I didn't see it then, but now I see it. So anyway, that was one aspect. Bobby. We named him Bobby because Bobby was stupid. But there was other aspects. Like, I'm a photographer and I do great work, beautiful portraits and great artwork. And so I am the artist, you know. And then there was another aspect. Like, at that time, I had lost everything. Like, I lost my my wife, I lost my career, I lost my dog, I lost my house, I lost my son, I lost my daughter, I lost my former wife. They all abandoned me, and it was like I'd lost everything. So I became the loser, and that was an aspect of me too. But I was also, and another one we codenamed, it was Robertolonius, because I write songs, and when I wrote songs, the name I gave myself was Robertolonius, a very creative person. And I think altogether there was probably about 10 or 12 aspects. And we would talk about these aspects of who I really was. And what Paul was trying to uh, get me to see was that I didn't have to stay in one aspect all the time. Like, yeah, I could identify with Bobby. Yeah, I was stupid. I made mistakes. But I didn't have to stay there. I could say, okay, we visited Bobby. Now let's shift gears and let's be the artist, because I do great work. And he was trying to teach me that I didn't have to stay in a really super depressive, negative aspect of who I was. Now, what Paul was teaching me really kind of uh, I came to understand it fully was a few months later. And my niece was getting married. And this was a big all day affair. And everybody was going to be there, my relatives and people I hadn't seen for a long time. And I just figured I'm so depressed. How can I show up with all these people? And I was worried, and I just so I called Paul. I said, Paul, I'm going to see this wedding, and I don't think I can do it. And the first thing Paul said was, I wouldn't show up as Bobby. And the second thing Paul said was, do you think you can show up as Robertolonius? And I thought, and I said, yeah, I can do that. So anyway, the day of, it starts. I was there in the early morning. Beautiful day, sunshine, right on the lake. Beautiful place, rock gardens, flowers. Everybody's dressed up and happy, and the wedding starts. I think it was around 11 o'clock a.m. And the minister says to the to the bride, "Do you take this man to be your lawful wedded husband to cherish and whatever it is?" And this is like a knife through my heart, because it was years before when my wife had said that to me, and I thought it was going to last forever until she decided to change her mind. So anyway, it was like a knife through my heart, and it hurt. And but I'm not saying anything. I'm still Roberto Lonius. And as the day wore on, I started to talk to just about everybody. And I had this camera and I started taking pictures of people. And, I really did become Roberto Lonius. I had a great day and I was there till 11:30 at night. And I forgot all about being depressed, you know? And I learned something. I really learned something from that day. I learned I didn't have to show up as Bobby. And from that day on, my daughter never saw Bobby again, and our relationship started to improve. I learned that I didn't whenever I went out and dealt with people, no matter what I was doing, I showed up as Roberto Lonius or the artist. And that gradually my life started to change. It really did. Yeah, when I went to see like a therapist, say for example, I would show up as Bobby and say, "Yeah, I'm struggling, and I need help," and I would show up as Bobby. But that was the only time. Besides that, I was Roberto Lonius. And gradually, as time went by, my life changed incredibly. Um, and there was a documentary, and I've seen it over the last, I think, year, probably about 6 times. And it was a documentary exactly on act like you want to be, and soon you will be the way you act. And it was just amazing. It's a true principle. And like there was one woman who had spent her life in theater, and she explained how theater 101, it's um, like people fall in love, like actors fall in love. And because they act like they're in love. And they asked her, they said, well, when is it that actors fall in love? And she said, during rehearsal, of course, because that's when they practice. And they look into each other's eyes and they say, I love you. I love you. And they practice and they actually fall in love. And that happens very often. And it's just kind of like a known principle. So there was many, many, many aspects to in that documentary that was very good. So I learned to act like I wanted to be, and soon I would be the way I act because of Paul. But anyway, I know that principle is true. And maybe maybe one of the simplest way to explain that I found myself. This wasn't in the documentary, but there was many things in the documentary that were that are so interesting. But and that's to smile, to simply smile. And I started doing that. Like I kind of thought that when I went out in the street or whenever I did anything, that I had to be myself. And if I didn't feel that good, I didn't think, anything about just being the way I felt. And then I started to smile. Well, why don't I smile? Because smiling is a choice. And this is one of the things that I talk a lot about. Like I can look angry. I can look scared, or I can smile. I can smile. It's a choice, and it has nothing to do with what you feel like. You choose to do that, and when you do that on an ongoing basis, it changes your life. Like I think I've been doing it so long now that I can't remember when I. It was probably at that time, 4 or 5 years ago. But whenever I go into a store, like a grocery store and the checkout counter, I look at the girl. It's usually a girl or a woman, and I say, "How's your day going?" And I smile. And sometimes they look, "Hey, he's talking to me." This is new, but they always respond. I can't remember once, probably out of thousands, tens of thousands of times I've done that they haven't started up a little conversation. And sometimes you're there for 30 seconds or 1 or 2 minutes, and you have these really interesting conversations, and you get to kind of know them in that short period of time. But anyway, uh, it's it's fun. I feel good about myself, and I know they feel good about themselves, and it's so easy to do. But just smiling, you know, uh, all the time with all your relationships, whoever you work with, whoever you see on the street or you run into, you know, it will change your life. You know, it's what was it your grandma used to say? What's the matter, you? It's a not so bad. It's a nice place. Ah, shut up your face. Grandma was right. Just smile, just be happy, you know, and it will quite literally change your life. I think it was about I think it was about a year later, after I dealt with Paul, and I started really getting better. That was such a big, and what I was actually doing was I was learning to reinvent my life. That's just another act like you want to be, and soon you will be the way you act. It's just another way of reinventing your life. But it's an important principle. It really is. And I think it was a year later, and I was going to a therapist, kind of like she was the only one I paid for, and she was expensive. And I used to go for these 2-hour sessions. And when I used to go there, I used to always start by saying, "I'm in trouble. I need help." And then we would talk, and she was really helpful. She did a lot of things that helped me along the way. But anyway, I was getting better, and this was almost a year later, and I went for a last time. Like I know I didn't have to go, but anyway, I wanted to kind of finish it off. I wanted to say goodbye. I wanted to say thank you, for helping me along the way. So anyway, I show up, and of course, I don't say I'm in trouble or anything like that. And we start the session. I'm just having a good time, telling stories and kind of laughing a bit, and we're, and after about an hour, all of a sudden she's getting really pissed off at me, and she says out of the Robert, this is therapy. And I started laughing. And she started laughing too because we both got it at the same time. I didn't have to be there anymore. We were done. And this is a beautiful thing, really, because I mean, that's the way therapy should be. I mean, you should go and you should get better and you should say, that's it. We succeeded. We're done. It worked. Thank you. And that's happened. And now she refers to me as the graduate because I've graduated. I don't see any therapist anymore. I haven't seen any therapist or anybody like that. I'd have absolutely nothing to say, which is really a good place to be. So anyway, I'm doing my podcast now one time. So this is the one time. And I kind of think I've said what I meant to say for this time, except, you know, it's too bad kind of in a way that everybody doesn't have a Paul, that can and have the experience that I had by going through and, realizing our different aspects and helping you to reinvent your life. But anyway, I'm just so thankful for so many of the people, and there's been so many in my life that have helped me along the path. And I've never been happier than I am now, and that's just really a great place. But I couldn't have done it alone. There's no way I could have, and I'm so thankful to all those people. And kind of like in these podcasts, I will tell you stories about many of the people who had a great impact and who are just incredible people. And what they have to offer, insofar as recovery is concerned. So even though you can't have a Paul retired, by the way. So, but you can have me.